Hi there. My name's Alexandra. I found out my husband was cheating with my sister. I divorced him, but that wasn't the end. 3 months later, I got 103 missed calls from him in one night, and that's still not the worst part. My parents? They threw me out and threw her an engagement party. Then they asked me, begged me, to save her life. It started with laughter. Not mine. Never mine. I was standing in the corner of a polished ballroom at Cassian's company gala, swirling cheap champagne in a fancy flute, trying to look like I belonged. He was across the room, surrounded by coworkers who all seemed to admire him just a little too much. Ashbridge wasn't a big city, but tonight, the venue looked like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, live string quartet, all meant to dazzle. And it did, for about 15 minutes. Then I noticed how Cassian kept checking his phone, eyes flicking nervously toward the stage. He'd been on edge all week, brushing off my questions with tight smiles and lines like, "It's just a big deal at work, babe. Don't make it more than it is." I wish I'd made more of it. Someone bumped into me gently. "Your husband's getting an award tonight, right? You must be proud." I smiled politely. "I am." What I didn't say, I didn't even know which award. Cassian had stopped sharing those details months ago. The host stepped up to the podium, voice booming through the room. "Let's take a quick walk down memory lane before we honor tonight's leadership team." The lights dimmed. A large screen flickered on behind him. Slideshow time. I braced myself for grainy team-building photos and corporate bonding nonsense. The first few slides were harmless. Company outings, ribbon cuttings, someone winning a chili cook-off. Then came the photo. It popped up like a slap. Cassian, standing barefoot on a beach, laughing. Next to him, my sister, Seren. She was in his arms, her head tilted into his neck, his hand casually resting on her hip like it belonged there. Her smile was wide and smug. A few people chuckled. "Is this real?" Someone whispered near me. I didn't move. Cassian stood frozen too. His jaw clenched, eyes locked on the screen, like maybe if he stared hard enough, it would go away. It didn't. Someone from HR scrambled up to the laptop, yanking the cable from the projector. The screen went black. But it was too late. I had seen it. We all had. Cassian looked at me across the ballroom. He opened his mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to lie. But I turned and walked straight out. I didn't wait for him to follow. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. Not when my head was pounding and my skin felt like it was on fire. By the time I got home, the silence wrapped around me like armor. I poured a glass of wine with a shaky hand and sat down in the living room, still in my heels. I stared at our wedding photo on the bookshelf, me in lace, him in navy blue, the ocean behind us. I picked it up and turned it face down. That version of us didn't exist anymore. Red flags flashed in my mind like a bad montage. Seren had moved back to Ashbridge just a few months ago. Broke, dumped, and conveniently unemployed. Cassian had suggested helping her find work. It's not a big deal, she's my sister-in-law. And somehow she landed in his department. They started hanging out after hours for project meetings. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. The way they'd lower their voices when I walked into the room. God, how stupid was I? When Cassian finally came through the door 2 hours later, he looked like he'd been through a war. Tie undone, hair messy, eyes puffy. "Lex," he started. "Look, I didn't know that photo would show up. It was old. It meant nothing." "Don't," I said quietly. He took a step closer. "Please, you know how close our families used to be. That trip was forever ago. It's not what you think." I stood. "We'll talk tomorrow. I'm tired." He opened his mouth again, probably to toss out another line from the cheater's handbook. "You're overreacting." Or maybe, "It wasn't like that." I didn't care. I walked into the bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the floor in the dark. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stayed there, still in my dress, the zipper halfway down my back. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I stayed up making a plan. I could still hear the zipper, not the one on my dress, but the one I imagined, unfastening trust, tearing through years of loyalty like it was nothing but cheap fabric. The morning after the gala, I didn't speak to Cassian. He left early, claiming an emergency client call, but I knew better. It was always something lately, late nights, unread texts, meetings that couldn't wait. He'd been pulling away one excuse at a time. I just hadn't had the nerve to name it. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, nursing a cold cup of coffee, staring at the salt shaker like it might tell me what to do next. That's when I remembered the way Seren had been in the house. Too often, too easily. She'd stopped knocking after the first week. There were moments when I'd walk in from work and find her already in my kitchen, stirring something on the stove like she belonged there. "Just helping Cass with dinner," she'd chirp. "He's so helpless without me." Back then, I'd laughed. I thought I was laughing with her. Now I realized I'd been the punchline. I opened my laptop and Googled something I never thought I'd type. Best discrete security cameras for home. It arrived the next day, the size of a thumb drive. I tucked it behind the curtain rod in our bedroom, angled perfectly at the bed. I told myself it was to clear my doubts, but deep down, I already knew. 2 nights later, I came home early from the grocery store. Cassian hadn't expected me. His car wasn't in the driveway, but I still walked softly as I entered. I went straight to the bedroom. Everything looked untouched, but the pillows weren't where I left them. It was subtle, like someone had turned them around. I didn't say anything. I just grabbed the SD card and slipped it into my laptop. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Cassian walked in, towel wrapped low around his waist. He sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. Then Serene entered, topless. She tossed a shirt on the chair, laughing. This high-pitched, breathy sound I hadn't heard since high school. He looked up, smiled, and opened his arms. They kissed, long and slow. Then she climbed into our bed, my bed, like it was hers. As she lay back against my pillows, she said, "This mattress is better than anything I had with Kevin. You really scored here." He laughed. "I try to keep the women in my life comfortable." I didn't move. I didn't pause the video. I just sat there and watched them erase me. I had made that bed that morning, fluffed the pillows, lit a candle on the dresser, folded his t-shirts, and placed them neatly in his drawer. I had done all the things you do when you think home is sacred, and he brought her into it like it was nothing. When Cassian came home later that evening, he acted like the world was perfectly intact. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and called out, "Lex? You hungry? I was thinking takeout." I was in the living room, staring at the turned-down photo again. He walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. I didn't flinch. "I'm not hungry," I said quietly. "I'm going to bed early." He looked at me, confused, maybe even concerned, but I could see it now. Not love, just fear of being caught. I turned and walked to the bedroom. That night, I waited until I heard his breath even out, soft and slow, like a child who believed no one was watching. Then I opened the laptop again, not to rewatch, but to start taking notes. I began compiling passwords, account numbers, lease agreements. I texted my friend Veronica at 2 a.m. "Do you know someone who handles divorce?" Quietly. She replied within minutes. "I know the best." "Want me to connect you tomorrow?" I stared at that message, my phone screen glowing in the dark. Then I slid to the floor next to the door, knees to my chest. No tears, no screams, just stillness. I had been erased from my own life, but I was still breathing, and that meant I still had choices. I could forgive a lie, but I can't share my bed with betrayal. The day the envelope arrived, I was folding laundry in my tiny one-bedroom rental on the edge of Ashbridge. It had been a week since I moved out, 2 since I watched my marriage collapse in the glow of my laptop screen. The mailbox squeaked like it always did. Nothing special about it. Bills, an ad for a tire rotation, and then a cream-colored envelope. Handwritten. My name. My address. I thought it was from my lawyer. Maybe a follow-up to the divorce paperwork. I tore it open with one hand while holding a warm towel against my hip. It was a card. Not just any card, a wedding-themed one. Gold script, embossed letters. A photo fell out and fluttered to the floor. I stared at it. Cassian and Seren, in a sunflower field. She was in a white dress, not quite a gown, but close enough. He stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, lips pressed against her cheek. Her eyes were closed. She looked blissful. And on the back, in my mother's handwriting, "Family is everything. You're still welcome, if you choose love over hate." Mom. I sat down slowly, as if gravity had suddenly doubled. There was no invitation inside, no date, no details, just that card and that photo. So it wasn't a mistake, it was a message. I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number without thinking. She answered on the third ring, her voice too casual, like I'd just called to chat about recipes. "Hi, honey. Got your mail?" "Was that a joke?" I asked, my voice flat. A pause. Then, "Number. I just thought you should know. They're getting engaged. It's happening." "And you're hosting it?" I asked. Another pause. "They need support. We all do." "I needed support," I said, sharper than I intended. "When he cheated on me, with my sister." My mother's voice shifted, calm, cool, dismissive. "You're too emotional. You always take things so personally." I blinked, stunned. "You think this isn't personal? They didn't mean to hurt you. Things just happened. Serene deserves happiness too." There it was. That line again, the family mantra. Serene deserves happiness. As if mine was disposable, optional. "I'm hanging up now," I said. "Alexandra, don't be dramatic." I ended the call. My hands trembled. Not with rage this time, but with something heavier, older. Memories crashed in like waves. Me, grounded for coming home 10 minutes late. Seren, caught sneaking in 2 hours past curfew, laughing, eyes red, smelling like smoke, and getting a hug. Me, asking for $50 for a local volleyball camp, being told to earn it myself. Seren, flying to dance competitions in 3 different states before she turned 16. Dad never said anything, just nodded along with Mom, like a shadow that learned to keep quiet. I crumpled the card and threw it into the sink. Then I stood there, gripping the counter, breathing through my teeth. Later that night, I opened my journal. Not the one where I kept records for the lawyer. This one was just for me. I wrote, "I want a home where no one walks on eggshells. I want children who never feel invisible. I want a love that doesn't come with side glances and secrets. I want peace." Then I took the photo, held it over the sink, and lit a match. The paper curled, the faces distorted. The flames swallowed their joy like it had never existed. And I watched it all turn to ash. I wasn't just losing a marriage. I was burying a bloodline. Brightmoor didn't feel like home yet, but at least it didn't smell like him. The apartment was small, just enough space for a couch, a bed, and a kitchen that looked out onto a quiet street lined with maple trees. I filled the windowsill with succulents and herbs I didn't know how to keep alive, and every morning I tried anyway. That counted for something, didn't it? Work was remote now. I took calls in leggings and slippers. I joined a local women's group that met once a week at a bakery down the block. We didn't talk about trauma, not directly. We traded stories about bad dates, bad bosses, bad habits. Some of them knew what I wasn't saying. They let the silence stretch long enough for me to fill it when I was ready. One night, I made myself dinner. A simple stir-fry, the kind Cassian used to complain about. "Could we just order something? I'm not in the mood for kale again." I ate it proudly in my pajamas with a glass of Pinot, watching the rain tap against the window. It was the first time I felt almost okay. Then came the knock. Not a light one. 3 heavy thuds that didn't belong in this quiet place. I stood still, holding my glass midair. The second round of knocking was faster, more urgent. I crept to the door, my feet silent against the floor, and looked through the peephole. Cassian. Of course it was. I didn't move. He stepped back from the door, rubbing his hands together like he was nervous. Lex, please. I just want to talk. I'm not here to argue. My heart didn't race. It dropped. That kind of heavy sinking, that's not fear, not exactly. Just the weight of knowing what's about to happen and not wanting to face it. He spoke again, softer this time. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I opened the door, but only to the length of the chain. What do you want? I asked. He looked tired. Like the kind of tired that wasn't physical. I messed up, I know I did. That's not new information. He sighed. I didn't know who else to talk to. Things with Seren, they're not what I thought. I leaned my forehead lightly against the doorframe. You mean she's not the fantasy you built her into? She changed. No, I said. You just finally saw her for who she's always been. He didn't answer right away. I'm not asking for anything, he added. I just thought maybe we could have some closure, so we're not enemies. I almost laughed. Closure? I repeated. Is that what this is? You burned the house down, and now you want to talk about how warm the fire was? That's not fair, he muttered. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully, just long enough to step outside. I didn't invite him in. I wasn't that woman anymore. You broke me, I said quietly. And now you want to wrap it all up with a neat bow labeled closure? Number, you don't get that. He shifted on his feet. I didn't come here to make things worse. You did, I said, just by showing up. I miss you, he admitted, eyes low. I shook my head. No, Cassian. You miss who I was when I still believed in you. That woman's gone. We stood there for a moment. Wind brushed past us, tugging at the loose strands of my hair. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but I raised my hand. I'm building something new, and it doesn't include you. I stepped back inside and held the door. Next time, I added, I won't be the one answering. I closed the door, locked it, deadbolt too. Behind it, I exhaled. He stayed out there for another minute. I didn't look. Eventually, his footsteps faded down the hall. Let that be the last time I see his face. Let that be the end of all explanations. Filing the divorce papers felt less like an ending and more like throwing open a window that had been painted shut for years. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I walked into that courthouse in jeans and a blazer, handed over the documents with both hands, and walked out feeling 10 pounds lighter. I bought myself a bouquet of tulips afterward. Yellow ones. The kind he once said looked cheap. They looked like freedom to me. That night, I poured a glass of wine, turned on my favorite old jazz record, and let the music fill the apartment. There was no toast, no speech, just a small moment with myself, the first real celebration I'd had in a long, long time. It's done, I whispered. This is the first day of my real life. But real life, as always, doesn't wait long to test you. The next morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Still half asleep, I reached for it, expecting some auto-payment notification or a calendar reminder. Instead, it was a text from my bank. Joint checking. Balance $0, 0 cents. I sat up fast. Opened the app, refreshed. Still 0. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I was misreading it. Maybe it was a glitch. Then another notification popped up. Large withdrawal processed. $28,437 authorized user. Cassian Rowe. The blood drained from my face. I called the bank immediately, pacing the apartment like it could undo what just happened. Yes, ma'am, it was a fully authorized transaction, the representative told me, in a calm voice that made me want to scream. Since the account was joint and the divorce hasn't finalized, both parties retain full access. He didn't just leave me, I muttered. He looted the ruins on the way out. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. He had waited, calculated, just enough time to make sure I wouldn't suspect anything, just long enough for me to start believing I was safe. I texted him, not a rant, just this: "You can take the money, I'll build again, but don't mistake silence for surrender." He didn't reply. I spent the rest of the day calling my lawyer, updating all the necessary forms, closing what was left of our shared accounts. I set up a new one in my name only. I canceled every subscription, every automatic payment that tied me to him in any way. Then, I opened my jewelry box and started separating pieces I hadn't worn in years, gifts from him, from my parents. I'd sell what I could. The rest? I didn't need weight in my life that no longer held meaning. I didn't cry. I didn't even swear. I just moved. That evening, I took a walk with Nina, a woman I'd met at the women's group. She had gone through her own war, 10 years with someone who made her doubt her own reflection. She knew the quiet rage that lives just under your skin. "I'm not okay," I admitted. "You don't have to be," she said. "You just have to stay in motion." "I'm angry." "Good," she smiled. "That means the fire's still in you." We walked in silence for a while, our breath fogging in the cool air. I watched a group of kids ride their bikes down the sidewalk, laughing so loudly it echoed. I remembered thinking once that Cassian and I might have had that. Kids, chaos, bedtime stories. Now, I was glad we didn't. When I got home, I put the tulips in water. They had started to bloom, stretching toward the kitchen window, like they knew something better was coming. He took the money. I kept the fire. I was starting to breathe again. The days had fallen into a rhythm. Simple, steady, healing. Work came easier. My appetite had returned. I even joined a community yoga class down the block, where no one knew my story and no one cared who I used to be. Rowan stopped by now and then, never asking for more than I could give. He brought coffee, small talk, warmth. We weren't a thing, not yet, but he made the silence feel safe. One morning, I was chopping vegetables for a soup recipe I'd saved 3 months ago and only now had the energy to try. My phone buzzed on the counter, email notification. Subject line, HR follow-up, workplace conduct concern. I frowned, tapped it open. The email was formal, too formal. Attached was a scanned document labeled, Internal Complaint, Conduct Violation, filed by Seren Rowe. I stood frozen, knife still in my hand, the soup forgotten. The accusations? Threatening texts? Unwanted contact with workplace associates. Verbal harassment. They claimed I had been using my connection to Cassian's job to damage her reputation and stability, that I was unstable, that I needed to be formally addressed. My stomach twisted. It was a lie, every word. And she knew it. I hadn't spoken a single word to anyone at that company since I left town. I hadn't sent a message, not even to Cassian, not since the text about the stolen money. I hadn't even said her name out loud in weeks. I reread the document, this time slower, the legalese feeling more like an assault than protection. And then it hit me. How did they even get my contact information? I called the HR rep listed in the email. She was polite, professional, apologetic. "We used the emergency contact information left on file when you helped refer Ms. Rowe for her initial interview," she said. Of course. I'd been the one to suggest the job. I had emailed the hiring manager myself. I had written her a glowing referral. She wasn't just trying to erase me from the picture. She wanted to rewrite the whole history, starting with painting me as the problem. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply through my nose. "She's not satisfied taking him," I said out loud to no one. "She wants to finish the job." I opened my laptop. I spent the next 2 hours crafting a calm, concise response. I stated clearly that I had made 0 contact. I attached screenshots, proof of silence. I forwarded a copy of my divorce filing and included a note that I would pursue legal measures should the harassment continue. Then I wrote something else. I opened my private blog. It wasn't massive, but it had grown over the years into a space shared among women who had been through things, real things, betrayal, divorce, estrangement. It wasn't therapy, but it was community. I wrote a new post. The title came to me easily. What they take when they can't touch you anymore. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I wrote about being used as a stepping stone and then accused of being the storm. I wrote about how some people won't rest until they've convinced the world that you're what they broke. And I wrote this. They don't just want your silence, they want your disappearance. So if you're still here, still standing, don't let them win. The post went live that night. Within hours, the comments started rolling in. Women from everywhere. Some recognized Seren's name from old dance circuits. Others didn't know her, but they knew the story, the pattern, the gaslighting. One comment stuck with me. They tried to bury you, but they forgot you were a seed. Rowan texted not long after. Just 5 words. Proud of you, I'm here, always. I smiled for the first time that day, and then my phone buzzed again. A new message. Unknown number. Can we talk privately? Dad. No greeting, no apology. Just that one line, as if the past year hadn't unfolded like a slow-motion car crash I was forced to watch from behind the glass. I didn't answer right away. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then locked. I told myself not to open it again, but I did. I typed, "What is it?" The dots appeared almost instantly. "Your sister's sick. She doesn't have long. Please don't make this worse than it has to be." I blinked. My stomach turned cold. Another message followed. "It's not about who was wrong. It's about what's right. You're the only match we have." I read the words 3 times. There was no, "We're sorry." No, "We should have believed you." Just the ask. Clean, transactional. They wanted my body, not my truth, not my forgiveness, not even my presence. Just my kidney. My phone buzzed again. "We're not asking you to move back. Just think about what kind of person you want to be." I tossed the phone onto the couch and walked straight to the sink. My hands needed something to do. I started scrubbing a mug I'd already washed, the sponge squeaking against ceramic while my mind screamed through every inch of silence. He didn't reach out when Cassian lied, or when Seren posted that photo, or when Mom defended them like I was some jealous stranger. But now that their precious daughter was sick, now I was useful again. That night, Rowan came over. I didn't say much. I didn't have to. He saw my face and just nodded, giving me space. We watched a movie, sort of. It played in the background while I sat stiff on the couch, arms folded, staring at the wall. When he left, I checked my email before bed. Subject, "Thought you'd want to see this." From Marla, I knew better. But I opened it anyway. There it was. An image, photoshopped, obviously. A smiling picture of Callan, my son, cropped from a school photo and placed between Cassian and Seren, standing in front of some generic suburban home, all of them holding hands like a family unit ripped from a magazine cover. Captioned in cursive at the bottom, "This is family, even if you won't accept it." My hands started shaking so violently, I dropped the phone. They had used my child, to manipulate me, to redefine reality. I picked up the phone and dialed. Mom answered on the second ring. "I knew you'd see it. I just wanted you to—" "How dare you?" I said, low and sharp. "How dare you use my son as a pawn?" "He deserves to know his family," she shot back. "Don't be selfish, Alexandra." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the only sound I had left that wouldn't turn into a scream. "You mean he deserves to know the man who slept with his aunt? Or the woman who tried to erase his mother from the picture?" There was silence. "You always thought blood mattered more than truth," I said. "But let me be clear, blood means nothing without respect, and you have none left." I hung up. I blocked every number tied to them, deleted voicemails I hadn't even listened to, called my lawyer the next morning, and requested a formal no-contact order. "They didn't just try to erase me," I said, voice flat. "They tried to rewrite me." That evening, I found myself on the back porch with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, staring into the dusk. Rowan came and sat beside me. He didn't speak. He didn't touch me. He just waited. After a long while, I said, "They can live the rest of their lives knowing I was the only one who could save her, and I chose me." He reached for my hand. Just held it. No pressure. Just presence. And then, as if the universe couldn't let me have a single moment of stillness, the mail came. A thick envelope from the hospital. I opened it slowly. "You are a confirmed match for the transplant. Awaiting your scheduling availability." I stared at the letter, feeling nothing and everything all at once. I was a match, but that didn't mean I had to give them anything. The flight back to Ashbridge was quiet, like the sky didn't want to be part of what I was about to do. I didn't take Rowan. I didn't take Callan. I booked a hotel 2 blocks from the hospital and packed only one small bag. No one needed to know I was coming. No one but the hospital coordinator, who had been calling every other day since the match was confirmed. When I walked through the front entrance, the woman at the desk looked up, recognized my name on the schedule, and smiled like this was some kind of reunion. "You're the donor, right? The match?" "They're very relieved." I gave a polite nod. I didn't say a word. I wasn't here to save anyone. The nurse guided me through pre-op intake, even though I hadn't signed a consent form. I let her check my vitals, ask about allergies, hand me a hospital badge. I followed the steps because I needed access, not participation. "I came here for one reason," I said silently to myself as I looked down the hallway toward the transplant wing. "And it's not what they think." The conference room was already full when I arrived. Marla sat in the corner, clutching a tissue as if rehearsing grief. Dale stood behind her, arms crossed, trying too hard to appear composed. The transplant surgeon was flipping through a file, reviewing charts like this was just another Tuesday. And then there was Seren, pale, hollow-eyed, but smiling when she saw me, like nothing had happened, like this was a normal family reunion. "Alex," she said, her voice thin but familiar. "You came." She reached out, her hand twitching from the IV. I didn't move closer yet. I waited for the surgeon to begin. "We're fortunate," he said, addressing the room. "You're an exceptional match, rare, even among siblings. The procedure itself is routine, and your recovery will be closely monitored. Now, before we proceed with consents..." I raised my hand. He paused. Everyone turned toward me. "I'd like to say something." Seren blinked. Marla sat up straighter. Dale narrowed his eyes. I stepped forward and stopped just short of Seren's bed. I looked down at her, at the woman who stole my husband and never once apologized. The woman who posted photos of my child with her arms around him like he was hers. I took her hand, not to comfort, but to hold her still. "Did you hear what they said?" I asked softly. "I'm a perfect match. The only one." Her eyes filled with tears. Hope bloomed across her face. "But I won't save you." The room fell silent. "What?" she whispered. "Why?" "Because you took something from me," I said, steady and sure. "Something I can't get back. And now, for the first time in my life, I get to choose me." Seren started to speak, but I let go of her hand. I turned to my parents. Marla's mouth was open in disbelief. Dale looked like he'd been slapped. "Don't ever contact me again," I told them. "Not for death, not for birth, not for holidays or apologies or redemption. I owe you nothing." "You'll let her die?" Marla asked, stunned. "I'll let her face what she created." And with that, I walked out. No screaming, no drama. Just the sound of my heels clicking against the tile, echoing louder than anything they had left to say. Outside, the air hit my face like water after fire. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs in a way I hadn't in years. I pulled out my phone and called Rowan. "I did it," I said. I walked away, not in anger, just clarity. There was a pause. Then his voice, warm and grounding. "Come home." I smiled. At the gate, I sat quietly, one hand resting on my lap, the other clutching my boarding pass like it was a passport to something new. That, I whispered to myself, was the only thing I ever gave her. The chance to know what losing feels like. Back in Brightmoor, the trees had started to blush with autumn. Leaves swirled across the porch as my sons played with sidewalk chalk, their giggles carrying into the crisp air like tiny birdsong. I sat on the steps, a cup of tea warming my hands, watching them scribble stick figures and stars across the concrete. Rowan's mother stopped by, as she often did now, holding a paper-wrapped loaf still warm from the oven. She kissed my cheek and said, "You look lighter." I didn't argue. I had finally found quiet. Not the kind that comes from emptiness, but the kind you earn after surviving the noise. And of course, that's when the ghosts came knocking. That night, just after I tucked the boys in, I went to plug in my phone and noticed the screen blinking nonstop. Missed call after missed call. 28, 43, 60, 90. By the time I opened the log, it was 103, every single one from Cassian. I didn't panic. I didn't flinch. I just stared. The final voicemail transcribed itself as I watched. "She's dying. She blames me. I don't know what to do. Please. I'm sorry. Just, please." The desperation was real, but it wasn't mine to carry. Rowan walked in quietly, glanced at my face, then down at the screen. He didn't ask. He simply reached out, turned off the phone, and said, "Let's keep it off tonight." I nodded. I didn't respond to the calls. Not one. Instead, I pulled out a journal I hadn't written in for months. And I wrote, "He chose her. My family chose her. And I chose myself." That's the story. The next morning, Rowan offered to help me change my number. We added new locks to the front and back doors. Upgraded the security cameras too. "You never need to hear from them again," he said. "I don't want to," I replied. And I meant it. Later that afternoon, I opened a storage box I hadn't touched since I moved in. At the bottom, beneath papers and scarves and old receipts, was the wedding photo I had once slammed face down. I looked at it for a long time. Not with anger, not even grief, just clarity. Then I placed it gently in the donation pile. Someone else could use the frame. That evening, after the boys were in bed, I stepped out into the backyard to find fairy lights strung across the trees. A blanket on the grass. 2 glasses of wine. Rowan was waiting, barefoot, holding a basket of crackers and cheese like it was the finest picnic ever planned. "No special reason," he shrugged. "I just wanted to toast." "To what?" I asked, smiling despite myself. He raised his glass. "To choosing peace over proving a point." We clinked glasses, and for once, there was no aftershock waiting to ruin the stillness. Later, as I sat barefoot in the grass, arms around my knees, stars overhead, and warmth beside me, I whispered to myself, "I still carry the scar, but it no longer stings." This was home, not perfect, not polished, but mine. And I was surrounded by sons who knew they were seen, by a partner who chose me in both silence and storm, by a family I built, not one I was born into. There is no next chapter, just the one I write from here, with my own pen. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is choose yourself, especially when the people who were supposed to love you first are the ones who hurt you the deepest. I used to think loyalty meant staying silent. I used to believe that forgiveness was mandatory, but I've learned something else. You don't owe anyone access to your peace. Not ex-husbands, not blood relatives, not the ones who rewrite history just to make themselves look like heroes. You are allowed to walk away from people who handed you grief in the name of family. You are allowed to heal on your own terms. And if you're watching this right now, maybe going through something just as messy, just as painful, I want you to know, you're not alone. You are not broken, and you don't need their approval to rebuild something beautiful. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they kept choosing to hurt you? What would choosing yourself look like for you today? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And hey, if this video moved you, made you pause, or helped you feel seen, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't speak to you, I'd still love to know why and where in the world you're tuning in from. Let's connect. Let's grow through what we go through. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that heal, challenge, and empower, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. You matter. Your voice matters. And this space, it's for us. Until next time, take care of your heart. It's the only one you've got.